Welcome to Active Teaching Lab. Forgive me if I stutter or stop a minute. I am letting people in as they arrive. So we'll just get started though, and use the entirety of this hour to have a conversation with Brian Thompson. And just to introduce a bit of what we'll be talking about today, we know AI will impact your careers of everybody going through college now, including UW Milwaukee's own students, and whether or not they're going to be directly involved with that technology or just utilizing components of it as it reshapes their roles in the workforce. And so university instructors are kind of in the front line of adapting their courses to best prepare our students in this changing environment. And Brian Thompson is going to be talking with us today a bit about how companies are utilizing and implementing AI and how it's impacting their hiring, or that we as instructors or educators on campus can best prepare for that shift in industry and commerce. But first, before I let Brian start talking, I'm just going to quickly introduce him, give him a kind of more lamer version of the walk-up music, so to say. As best I can do, sorry. Brian is Chief Innovation and Partnership Officer and leads UW Milwaukee's Office of Strategic Partnerships. He is responsible for building partnerships that enhance and uplift the academic enterprise, research accomplishments, and student experiences at UW Milwaukee. In this role, he oversees key initiatives that include the Connected Systems Institute, Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute, Freshwater Collaborative of Wisconsin, and the Lubar Entrepreneurship Center. Thompson joined the UW Milwaukee community in 2006. And in addition to all the things that he's doing that I listed above, he has taught new ventures as an adjunct instructor at the Lubar College of Business and the UW Milwaukee's Honors College. In previous roles, Mr. Thompson has led the development and launch of communication satellites, which is so awesome. And I see a satellite right behind him over his shoulder there. He has worked at corporate ventures and helped create startups in biotechnology and the entertainment industry. He holds bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from Purdue University and an MBA from UCLA. Welcome, Brian. Thanks for joining us.
Lane, thank you for having me. And I have had the pleasure of sitting in on several of these presentations. I always walk away richer for the experience. I hope the same is true for you when you're done. So the topic for today, I'm going to go in and out of screen share mode here along the way. But the topic for today is an industry perspective on careers in an AI-enabled world. That's a lot. I'm going to do the best I can and share with some things. Let me give you what I want to do is give you a little context on my role in strategic partnerships, and then share with you a couple of thoughts that I've picked up along the way from talking to various colleagues. And I guess I want to humbly acknowledge these are small data points, but first of all, let me give you the context of what we do in strategic partnerships. You may not know much about what we do, so this informs a lot of what I'll talk about today. But at a high level, actually I want to get so I can see more of you online. All right. I'm getting, I got to reacquaint myself with the Zoom windows and whatnot. So strategic partnerships at UWM. I'm a humble office of one, but we've got a lot of great people that we work with and initiatives that we're linked to. It includes, as Lane was describing, the Connected Systems Institute. CSI is a partnership, and Lane, you can see my screen, correct? Double check? Okay, all right. CSI is a partnership that includes founding partners Rockwell Automation and Microsoft. And much of the work we do in strategic partnerships is about bridging the gap between the university and industry and trying to make it easier for them to interact with us in different ways, whether that's for talent, research, curriculum, things like that. And so Rockwell and Microsoft came together and helped in the formation of the Connected Systems Institute. And I'll tell you a little bit about what that is. On the Connected Systems Institute, CSI, it's run by my colleague, Dr. Joe Hammond. It is really about enabling manufacturers to apply advanced automation and AI to ensure their long-term productivity. Wisconsin is a huge manufacturing state, number 2 in the country in terms of manufacturing jobs. We've got a whole bunch of small manufacturers in addition to some big ones, and they're not necessarily implementing these advanced technologies that we think are important to keep them competitive. And keeping them competitive has implications for our own economic prosperity and national security. So the big mission of CSI is how do we get a better pipeline of talent with students and workforce that can serve these needs? And then how do we test out and demonstrate new solutions? And so there's a research aspect, there's a teaching aspect to it, and several layers to what we do in the Connected Systems Institute. CSI is also the home to the Microsoft AI Co-Innovation Lab. I'll talk about that in a minute, I guess, but let me, losing track of my own slides, give you a quick hit on CSI. One of the things, if you've been on the UWM campus, if you notice walking by the breezeway in the library, there is a test bed there, a manufacturing test bed. And what we're trying to do in that test bed is demonstrate and test out various ideas that we can show for industry. Researchers can work on the test bed. Students get to work on the test bed in a simulated manufacturing environment. They have an open house once a month if you want to come by, or if you're interested in learning more, I'd be happy to take you through. But if you look at that, what we've got are some test cases. One of them is it's a research platform. And in the manufacturing environment, there's the line, if you will, which is controlled typically by PLCs, program logic controllers. That's connected up through a layer. They call that the IT, the OT layer up into the cloud. And CSI offers an environment where people can test things out. There are other use cases where they're linking that together to link what's happening on the floor, the factory floor, all the way up to ERP systems or enterprise resource planning systems. So it's sort of effectively linking the shop floor to the top floor. Surprisingly difficult to connect those things together. And our Supply Chain Management Institute and Mark Hosfeld that leads that up has had some student projects around that, better establishing that linkage, which helps the enterprise run more efficiently. We've, through student projects, piloted an AI vision system where you can train up a model saying what's a good and bad part. Now, vision systems have existed for a long time, but this is a little more refined approach using an AI vision model. And so we've tested that out and demonstrated that there. There's another version around maintenance planning. These PLC controllers generate all kinds of data that largely isn't harvested. And there are opportunities to find out what's broken, or more importantly, what's likely to break by looking at the signature. And should we get out there and schedule downtime, order the parts in advance? That's another thing that we're working to implement in CSI. And one other quick example, this one is a maintenance cobot. The CSI line has a bunch of controllers and robots and a whole bunch of different parts, and thousands of pages of documentation that went along with that. The team there took all that documentation, put it into an AI model, and created an AI chatbot to help a maintenance person troubleshoot or start up and find problems with the lines. This one is actually getting some interest from industry members because it's fairly easy to implement, and they're all struggling in many cases in manufacturing with a retiring workforce. And so the chance to give them a tool to do it better is something very useful. So I mentioned CSI is also the home to the Microsoft AI Co-Innovation Lab. Microsoft has made big investments in Wisconsin around data centers and computing. And part of that investment was putting an AI co-innovation lab here at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. It's one of only 4 in the world. And the idea is that it helps manufacturers pilot AI solutions. It's kind of an interesting model. Manufacturers don't actually pay for this. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but Microsoft is doing this not just out of the goodness of their heart. They want to get people working on the AI, on the Microsoft tech stack, but it's really helping manufacturers figure out how do they implement AI. And CSI works very closely with the Co-Innovation Lab on bringing companies in. And so some of my perspectives are what I've gained from being out walking the floor with people around industry. The other major partnership, which really links in with AI, is the Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute, NMDSI. That partnership includes UW Milwaukee and Marquette coming together with Northwestern Mutual. And credit to Northwestern Mutual, this is a long-term investment in AI and data science talent. And so among the things that they're doing, they've helped fund nearly a dozen new courses here at UWM, new or modified courses. So there are faculty grants available to people like yourself to adapt your courses to include AI. It's not just in business or engineering. These courses have been, these grants have gone across the disciplines in various ways. They've supported students. They've also launched, as part of the NMDSI effort with Dr. Papatla's leadership, 2 new cross-disciplinary degrees, a BA that you can add on to any other degree you have. So it could be anything from engineering or economics to dance. You can add a BA in data analytics and AI, I think it is, and an MS degree. So curriculum, student support, and course and faculty research is what NMDSI is doing. So that's part of what we do. The other elements of my role here are with the Lubar Entrepreneurship Center. Dr. Ilya Avdiv is the leader there, where we're really trying to foster entrepreneurial thinking among students and faculty in the community. It's not just about starting companies. It's really about how do we help people be more successful in their career, regardless of their chosen discipline. The other element that bears less here, but it's the Freshwater Collaborative of Wisconsin, FCW. Dr. Marissa Jablonski leads that. That's effort to pull together the various UW system institutions. Thanks, Green Bay, for joining us today, by the way, around water programs. And so that has a couple of elements to it. One is how do we knit together our curriculums? Another element is how do we inform research solutions around emerging contaminants? So that is a really quick hit on the strategic partnering effort. I'll pause for just a second there and ask if there's any questions, and if not, I'll pivot into the industry perspectives. Any questions on that element? And if not, I can push on. Although I learned from a colleague in the School of Education that, and Elaine, I might be guilty of this, instructors typically don't wait long enough. So, Lane, anything you'd like to question or comment?
It's often 3 seconds. That's how long we wait. So yeah, you did good. You beat the average.
But it's supposed to be 4.
Yeah, little high.
But I'm working with a group of instructors, so you probably bested me on that all. So okay, that's strategic partnering, and you'll see woven into that some of how my perspectives are informed by that work. So let me turn back to some perspectives. And I guess I want to caveat, this isn't a statistically significant sample. I'm respectful. I'm working with researchers at an academic institution. These are merely observations, so please take them for what they're worth. Some of this work comes from a panel I led, or some of the ideas here, Northwestern Mutual Data Science Institute, NMDSI. One of the things they do is try and bring together people in the industry. So I got to moderate a panel in March called AI and Job Automation, Reality versus Myth. Ron, this sounds a little bit like what you're doing tonight. But I had the opportunity to get together in advance with several of the panelists. And I took like a half hour, 45 minutes, and just dug in on what they're doing. And it made things a lot more lively on the panel discussion. So it included from direct supply. On the end there, you see Randy Kirk. The next guy down is from Northwestern Mutual, Anthony Perez, and then from the Milwaukee Bucks organization, Sumathi Thiagarajan, and then there's a Marquette professor in there, but also on the end, just poking in, is Matthew McCarthy, UWM graduate working at Harley Davidson. So had a chance to learn a little bit about their work, and some of what I'll share again comes from that. The other insights come from the work we're doing with CSI. In terms of bringing companies into the AI co-innovation lab, we're out walking the factory. We're learning what they're doing on the factory floor, where the data is. And so, again, there's a mix of where these observations come from. And if you've got questions along the way, Elaine, I'd ask for your help here. Don't hesitate to raise your hand. If you let me go, I'll keep going quickly, but I will try and pause and make sure that I might touch on any questions you have or comments. I'd really be curious for your perspectives as well. So, in that panel discussion in particular, we talked about sort of this idea of AI replacement, or I tried to frame it around there's a spectrum for AI in industry. There's replacement, augmentation, and things that will remain a human task and not ultimately subject to replacement. Much of the action is really around augmentation. And so that's where we focused a lot of our discussion in the panel discussion. I respect that there are certainly jobs that will be changed initially and eventually go away. We don't have a lot of wagon wheel makers anymore. I understand technology will overcome that, but I think in the near term, it's really about augmentation. And that work around augmentation is what's going to help people pivot into different roles in industry. So the discussion really was around AI on the augmentation topic. And we played around a little bit with this theme of myth versus reality. And one of the ideas was on job replacement, industry perspective. Myth is that AI will replace workers. The reality is it may help solve some problems in retiring workers. This may be a little bit more of a manufacturing perspective, but we talk to manufacturers, they can't get enough of the right kinds of people to do their work. That's part of why CSI exists. But, we're struggling with, in some respects, while there are certainly pockets of people that have difficulty finding employment, there's lacking in workers that have certain skills. And so particularly with a retiring workforce and an aging demographic, much of it in the manufacturing industry, AI can maybe help solve some of that problem. So myth versus reality there. Another colleague from the manufacturing industry made the point, automation isn't going to cause people to lose their jobs. It's going to liberate them for a higher purpose. this is a leader who's fairly thoughtful on this, but he's implementing AI. He's got a machining business basically on the south of Milwaukee, but he's made a commitment to his team. If you help us automate that task, I'll help train you up for the next higher level of task, and I'll pay you more as a result. And so that kind of thinking is a counterpoint to this idea that AI is going to take a bunch of take away a lot of jobs. For that sort of thinking, it really is helping improve productivity and our competitiveness. So it's going to liberate people for the next highest task, and I think that's really around that automation job. I heard a comment from a paralegal once who said, I'm not worried about AI automating my job. There's a lot of stuff I don't want to do, and so I think there's value in even in your own job seeing where AI can automate. AI and process reengineering. Myth. AI can fix existing processes. Reality. Many processes will need to be redesigned from the bottom up in order to work from AI. This came in part from Randy Kirk from Direct Supply, who talked about creating a robot that would interact with Direct Supply serves people in the aging industry or companies in that area, but talked about designing a robot where they really had to start from the ground up. This reminds me of something that I learned when I was in business school, now a while ago, but it was about process reengineering. And the idea or the observation came from work to implement ERP systems, enterprise resource planning, including systems like SAP. Now, a couple decades ago, companies literally spent and wasted billions of dollars failing to implement ERP systems. And the observation that this person made was that processes can be either stupid or smart, and they can be either slow or fast. And many processes now are slow and stupid. It's the way they evolved, and we grind through them. The point that this person made about ERP system implementation, and I think some of it's true for AI as well, is that you can't go from slow and stupid to fast and smart. There's like a path dependency here. You need to go from slow and stupid to fast and stupid before you can go to fast and smart. And I think if you look at the opportunities with AI, generative AI and other things, that's in the upper right-hand quadrant. It's fast and smart. But the opportunity in the near term is to take the processes we already understand, use AI to make them work better, so we can then move over to the fast and smart category. So as we're talking to people in industry and working with manufacturers and others, I'm looking for this lower hanging fruit where we can take something you're doing, a process or something like that, and make it better with AI. Because there's certainly people that can jump all the way to fast and smart, but I think for most of us, going from slow and stupid to fast and smart is hard. So you got to do that path dependency. So a thought on process engineering. Some observations on hiring and culture. One of the points that Randy Kirk made from Direct Supply was that using AI effectively is now a fundamental expectation of every new hire. Now, there's a spectrum on this. I'll give you a counterpoint in a moment. But and I actually last night happened to be at an event with our new chancellor, Chancellor Gibson, and talked to a Direct Supply recruiter responsible for recruiting at UWM. And she said, yes, in fact, any recruitment or person we interview, we ask about AI. Now, if you're there for an AI, a coding job or something very specific, it might be much more detailed. But even for someone that's coming in for a business role or something like that, they ask them, tell me what you've done with AI lately. How have you used it? How have you used it in your class or your own productivity? So our students, our graduates are being asked about AI. And some companies are making that are acknowledging that that's going to be part of what they do. Now, on the other hand, Harley Davidson has an area which is going deep into AI. They're using it in their consumer processing data, looking at consumers. But when we talk to the HR folks from AI, they're like, well, we're not really doing so much on AI. It's not a big factor in their hiring yet. So I have to acknowledge that we're all on an AI journey, which is, for me, it's kind of like license not to know stuff because I'm on my own journey. Similarly, companies are on their own implementation journey. And I think they may be earlier or later in that process. They may have pockets. So not every company is all in on AI yet. Elements there will be, but so it's a spectrum. But I would sure want our students and our graduates to leave here comfortable being able to speak about how they've used AI and how it might be used in their job. And of course, if you're in data science or AI or computer science, you're going to be expected to talk about it in a much different way. But for all of our students, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't give them some level of comfort there. Thoughts on organizational culture. This is a comment from our colleague at Northwestern Mutual. He said, it's a long game, and AI requires training at all levels. AI and generative AI really wasn't on our minds 3 and 4 years ago. So the C-suite at Northwestern Mutual, not to be disparaging, they weren't thinking about AI. Well, maybe they were 4 years ago, but you have to acknowledge that it's not just the incoming workers, it's throughout the organization that they need to learn about AI. I think we're adapting this to this at UWM with different ways, and I see Ron from the School of Continuing Education, different ways people can re-enter and getting much more flexible about that. But everybody in the organization's got to learn about AI at some point. And to my point earlier, sometimes the hiring manager may know less about AI than the person that they're hiring. And so I would certainly, as a prospective job candidate, I'd want to approach that with some humility, but it might be important to recognize that part of what they're trying to do and the value we offer for our students and our graduates coming to their companies is they're bringing some of that in-house, and they're going to help possibly lead that transformation inside those companies. So there was the fact that it's a long game. From the Milwaukee Bucks, Sumithi Thiagarajan, I believe she's a UWM graduate, if I'm not mistaken, but she works not on the player side. There's a lot of cool stuff if you're familiar with Moneyball, which is about using data in baseball. They're doing similar things in all professional sports. She doesn't work on that side. She works on, which is why she could talk about it. She works on the side where we're looking at consumer behaviors. How do we price tickets? When do people buy? How do we bundle things? How do we price other things that go around it? In her case, she reports in at the highest level of the organization. So here's a sports franchise that recognizes the importance of AI to the extent that Sumithi and her team reports in right at the highest level of the organization. So I think there's an organizational culture thing that hits many levels of the organization. Okay, other perspectives. Let's see. The data. It's all about the data, right? Our colleague from Harley Davidson made the comment, AI doesn't happen without cleaning up messy data. Lots of really, really messy data. And so it wouldn't be surprising that someone entering a new role is going to help clean that data up. Or said differently, if you're looking for where you might implement an AI solution, looking where the data is clean enough to get a start might be a place to do that. So, but we're going to have to get better about that. And I think there's a role. And again, if you talk to data, I wonder, sometimes our students may get a nicely packaged data set to work on, but they've got to know that when they get out in industry, it's going to be messy. And part of their job is to figure that out. And domain knowledge matters. So Dr. McCarthy gave the example. They've got a whole bunch of consumer survey data, and they were trying to figure out what makes a Harley comfortable. I love stories about Harley because it's like such a storied Milwaukee company. And the LLMs, the large language models, really weren't trained for that. They were trying to add a layer on top of that. But there's an element of domain knowledge that's unique to Harley riders in the way I presume it's where the handlebars, and I don't know the seat, I'm not sure, but even with a lot of data out there and access to these large language models, there's a limit to their training and a limit to what they can do. And in a corporate setting, you're going to need to acknowledge there's some domain-specific expertise needed there. We have a program in the Lubar Entrepreneurship Center called I-Corps, or Innovation Corps, with the National Science Foundation. And we send teams out to go talk to customers and test their ideas early on before they're ready to launch a company. It's a way to de-risk an early stage idea. And we've worked with university initiatives, departments, nonprofits, startup companies, researchers. It's a program I really think very highly of. In that, we teach people to follow the money. Inside an organization, who has the budgetary authority, how much are they spending on a problem, these kind of things. In the last few years, we've had to pivot that to a new idea of follow the data, because in an AI implement opportunities, following the data, knowing who owns the data and how it flows inside the organization is kind of analogous to following the money. So data, important for AI. That's not a surprising message there. Communication. This might be some solace to my respected colleagues in letters and science that worry AI is going to take away and replace certain jobs. It's a fair concern, but consistent theme is that communication is important. So myth, you need a computer science degree to succeed. Some roles, obviously, you do, but the reality is what you really need are strong communication skills. And this hits a couple other areas too. From the Bucks, our colleague, it's a people problem. They're in a people business. Obviously, we're not ready yet to pay to see AI generated avatars play basketball. That doesn't really sound like fun, but even on their side, Sumithi realizes that it's a people problem. And what she's described is that in their hiring practices, she's hiring now at the master's level. And so what she describes they do, and interestingly, they pull people from a whole bunch of different disciplines. On Sumithi's team, there are people who have been in biomedical science and different areas. But what they do as part of the hiring process is they give them a data set and a couple of days to work on that data set. And they come in and describe and give a presentation on that data. And they're less interested in a result than they are in their process and how they describe it. I took a first cut at the data, I analyzed it in this way, and I thought, I wonder about this. And so I tried a different set of tools and did these sort of things. And I saw this, and then that led me to think about this. So it's an example of what they're doing. It also speaks to the importance of experiential learning in the work that we're doing to prepare our graduates and our students. So those opportunities for students are not only important for their learning, but also it's what they're going to talk about when they go to that interview. Their experiential project they did with maybe a company or something that simulated. And this also was reiterated by a recruiter from Tech Systems that we talked to recently. There's a certain expectation in roles around the basic skills and what you're going to need for coding and these kind of things, but soft skills and communication are a real differentiator on the hiring side. So work that you're doing with students to get them up, present their ideas, think critically about that, it's important. So communication. This is a little bit of a look now thinking about companies we're working with in AI and manufacturing. And as we are out walking the factory floor, I think we're looking for opportunities where they might implement AI. And so it's in part about the people and the process. And so we look at things like on the front end, customer acquisition and intake. There's already a lot of public facing data there. There is the engineering process, which again occurs on the front end. And this is a little bit of a manufacturing spin, but I think it's applies in other industries as well. There is the maintenance and operations effort that leads into the production effort. And feeding the production effort is the company's own supply chain efforts, as well as the suppliers that feed into that. And then there is the customer service and getting the product to the customer. And then there's the C-suite. How do you run the organization and do the financial reporting, but make sure there's capital to keep the whole thing running? So there's the people and the process layer. The other layer there is the data, and it's sprinkled through organizations throughout the organization in different areas, and it can be messy. On the front end, there's probably a lot of consumer-facing data. There's websites and media and product specs and things like that. On the engineering side, there's test data and engineering drawings and development specs. On the operations and development side, there's maintenance logs that are maybe they were written by hand in the past. And there's engineering drawings and manuals. I mentioned the example earlier. On the production side, there are production schedules, and in the industry, they have these things called travelers, which is sometimes it's a paper sleeve or a sleeve that moves with the product as it goes down the assembly line. There's real-time data. The controllers are generating thousands of measurements per second. So there's data all throughout the production environment. In the supply chain side, there's vendor databases and product specs and qualification standards that links to suppliers and their RFPs and RFQs. And then at the management level, there's probably an ERP system, and there's other financial reporting, things like that. And so looking across a company for an opportunity, we're looking for this spot where's there a piece of the process that we can take and try and automate? Where's there data that's fairly mature, and how would we start? So I'd want to start by understanding the people, the process, and the data, and then I'd bring in the technology layer. And that could be machine learning. There's a debate among academics about whether, AI, the term has been around for a long time. I use it broadly, but machine learning is different than generative AI. But Phil Chang from our Department of Physics, if you know Dr. Chang, he likes to say, it's like, you don't have to throw generative AI at everything. Sometimes a principal factors analysis or machine learning is the right tool for the job. So I'd want to start with, what's the process? What's the opportunity? Where's the data? And then what tool do I want to bring to it? Then you could think about, well, do I want to use an LLM? If it's a simple taking the marketing data on the front end and reorganizing it, that could be one thing. Do I want to add a customization layer, or do I want to create an AI agent to access this data? So I think first about people and processing the data, and then I think about the tools. I think tech sector gets enamored with the own tools, but I'd want to start with what do we want to do with it? What's the business case? Where's the data? And start there. We're also working on campus to implement AI solutions. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to get into or come to some of the town halls that we've had, but Scott Janung and Parush Papadla led up a campus AI task force and has many layers to it, including different sectors as well as responsible AI and the technology side. If you may be aware, we've now rolled out Copilot for everyone's use, and it is an enterprise version of Copilot, so that the version you access through your UWM login is FERPA, acceptable for FERPA data. And so that was important that we understand and communicate that to the campus so that you know what you can do with it, and also be aware that if you're just putting it on an open platform, there may not be protections you want. So first layer is we've got a FERPA protected version of Copilot with a certain set of capabilities. We're rolling out other tools. In fact, we hope to get some ChatGPT EDU licenses available in the near future. There'll be a limited number of those, but we're working on that piece as well, which would allow instructors who are using AI more extensively in their courses to have a system that is a little more robust, if you will. The other thing that we're doing is looking at some cases where we might pilot AI in our own operations here. And so I'll offer some ideas that we're thinking about. These are early on. I don't want to raise any concerns by people whose jobs might be touched by this. It's really just talking points around some ideas where we might implement AI. So one of them is a UWM service navigation. It's kind of analogous in the manufacturing environment to that front end customer service. All the data we have on the websites, it's all publicly available now. Can we use AI chatbots? And this isn't rocket science, but can we use a chatbot to better integrate and present that data to our students, to our instructors, to our staff, and link that with the appropriate parties on the backside, which could be the dean of students or campus health services or anything. So this seems like a pretty straightforward use case. There's a lot of data there to comb, but it's data that we're not worried about because we're already got it out there public. Now, I mentioned the campus health. Obviously, we're not going to make the next layer of data where a student or somebody might interact with a healthcare provider, but simply the access to what the services are available. And that could also get to events and other things. How do we better serve our students, making these things available to them? Another opportunity where we take a slice of something and try and improve it might be on the transcript intake. I'm here in the Luber Entrepreneurship Center, and downstairs is Office of Undergraduate Admissions. There's a process when they get a high school transcript where they have to look at the GPAs and reconcile that and put it in more of a standard format. Doesn't come the same way from all GPAs, and there's another element that Chris Head and others get involved with it around course equivalencies. But is there a piece of that process we could take and use an AI agent, train it up to at least try the first cut at this GPA from this high school translates into this standard format? For this kind of thing, we'd want to make sure, especially as we figured out, that you always keep a human in the loop. So it should be something that helps the intake process, but we're not sure of the tools yet, and so we want to make sure we're fair to the students, and so you'd want to have a human in the loop. But this is a slice where we might try a process augmentation piece using an AI agent, and I think we'd learn from doing so. Another idea might be around registration change. And again, I want to acknowledge the important role that advisors play in their partnership with the students. But an agent might be able to help in the near term with all of the notifications that have to happen to different people in the process. And again, I want to keep a human in the loop on this, but eventually it might get more automated in terms of going into pause or other systems. But in the near term, we probably have an opportunity to just try this at a higher level to help connect the parts together. Another one we're thinking about, and there may be instructors that have done this already, is taking your course materials and creating a chat bot for students to make it more easy for them to access that information. University of Michigan rolled out a system to their campus that allowed instructors to do this, and they stood up like 1,000 chatbots for their students in individual courses. Does beg some questions around, certainly your own charts and assignments and syllabus could go into that chatbot. What if you reference articles? How do you do that? I'm not sure, but the question here might be, could we try it at UWM? Could we find a class like a large section freshman class where there's a lot of students taking it, a lot of information, and work together to use so that the teaching assistants could work with the instructor and the students to augment what they're doing. So a chatbot for courses. Again, some may already be doing this, but I think there might be an opportunity to experiment with that and see what that might look like at scale. And the other, more of a back office thing that we're thinking about is predictive analytics. If we look at the business analyst in a given academic unit, they're looking at historical budgets, trends, and a lot of information data. How could they better process that, and could AI give us some opportunities there? So these are things we're thinking about. I'd welcome your input there on this. But the bigger idea I have is kind of to think small. If we're going to implement AI, we don't need to go to that fast and smart right away. Where are the pieces of the process that we can automate, try it out, understand, learn from, implement, and help people that are working the jobs that are already strained in their resources think small. So with that, I would open it up for comments and invite your feedback as well. And I'll stop sharing here. Thoughts, perspectives. I know you brought a lot of perspectives to this. Your feedback would be appreciated.
Thank you so much, Brian. Are there any questions right away? We'll get to the AI grading one, Noel, just in a moment. Maybe as you were thinking, one thing I had a question for you, Brian, is across the companies you're working with, so Northwestern, Rockwell, Microsoft, Harley Davidson, the Bucks, what surprised you most about how they're actually using AI versus how we talk about it in education?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I have one answer because there's such a spectrum of what people are doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the cooler examples, I think Northwestern Mutual, for example, is pretty far ahead on looking at things like if you're a customer service agent working with a client on a certain set of products, AI can help you understand what other products you might want to offer to that client. Could
Yeah.
be an upsell. Yeah. So that's where I think they've gone pretty deep. In other cases, we're finding people there's still a lot of AI hesitancy in a lot of the companies. The companies you mentioned are all large companies. But among smaller companies, there's a lot of fear of missing out, but not a lack of clarity on how to move forward.
And is
Um,
there a different, like, are you seeing a bit more, like, how does it compare to how we talk about it in education, or how you hear about it on campus is maybe more of what I was trying to get at.
I'd have to, I
That's
understand your
okay.
question. I'm not sure I have a good answer for it. Let me think on
No,
that one.
that's all right. No, that's good. Noel,
Yeah,
please.
your question, I don't know if you want to reiterate your question on grading. What I am told is that, and Scott Janung can confirm this for us, that the Copilot version we have by accessing your data is FERPA compliant. So it is safe to expose that to FERPA data. Whether it's appropriate to use Copilot for grading, I don't know. That I think would be a more of an issue of professional standards inside your own department. I'm clearly out of my depth on answering
No,
that question relative to your department standards. Is that what you were asking about though? And no, maybe you could explain a little more, Noel.
Yeah, we've just had some earlier discussions in CETL and some other spaces about the FERPA issue. I know it was part of an earlier policy that I believe was a UW system policy that you were not to input any student work into into an AI model like a Chat GPT or Copilot or Gemini. So anyway, I do think actually that there would be some really interesting use cases for trying to give students rubrics and have them upload their assignments and check them against rubrics and see if, have them grade their own work or have them grade another student's work themselves and compare it to a chatbot. Like I think there's, or a chat GPT kind of model. I think there's potential there.
um,
But I did want to just push back on one thing that came up in this conversation about, and it may be because your focus is so focused on manufacturing where there's a very particular hiring issue going on, a lack of supply. I put something in the chat about some very recent reporting that came out. Eric Brynjolfsson, who's a very famous now economist of technology, just got a hold of ADP data a couple of weeks ago. And he was testing what people were hearing anecdotally, which is that there is now some evidence in hiring data that recent college graduates are being displaced by AI. So we were already hearing that from individual employers who were talking about how they were starting to have their more experienced workers augment with AI, and they were not hiring entry-level kinds of college, college entry-level positions. So I guess just a note to say that it'd be interesting if you kept your ears open for that in our local area to know a little bit more about whether or not that's happening here. And I certainly get asked by students about that a ton. I'll just say that.
Thank you for sharing the reference. I will take a look. And we had a speaker from Microsoft came in once. The guy's a computer scientist. He was talking to a group of computer scientists. He said, AI is going to take away all your jobs. I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't think that's
It's
true.
gonna, I mean,
You're going to need to
historically,
move up the
there's
stack.
disruption. There is
Yeah.
disruption. It
Yep.
doesn't take away everybody's job. It helps some, it hurts some, but the disruption can be painful for certain industries and certain populations. And so I think it's important to, it doesn't have to be a doom and gloom story, but I also don't want to hear a tech utopia on this either, I guess.
I'm an AI pragmatist and I respect it. Yeah, it's a great point. Thank you for sharing the article and making the point. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had been hearing as well. I've been reading. I think the Wall Street Journal had an article out about how Starbucks and in Seattle are noticing an uptick of applicants whose resume include jobs at Microsoft and Amazon. So that was kind of an interesting thing as well that was coming out. But I really appreciated what you were saying, Brian, about how I can't remember which group manufacturer it was. Is saying, hey, look, AI is changing how we do work. I need you to go look at the lower level tasks that AI is doing so that I can train you then to do the higher level ones. And I thought that was an interesting, like how they're adapting as well. So I appreciated that perspective too, because I'd been reading about the Wall Street Journal and the doom and gloom stuff. So,
and the recruiter we spoke to echoed some of that too. In depending on the market, the level of people applying for there are some very qualified people in the tech sector, computer science space that are applying for more low level jobs. Which is why I think for our graduates, giving them work experience, giving them relevant things to talk about, and communication as a differentiator is an important thing. Not enough. I realize there's some macro trends we're working against here, but anything we can do is a step in the right direction there.
any other questions? As you're thinking, I wanted to bring out one more thing, Brian, which I thought was really important in terms of you were saying, I want to give a shout out to the humanities folks. And you were talking about manufacturing and AI. And you were saying, hey, look, we aren't just going to throw generative AI at everything, right? We aren't going to just say, hey, we can use AI and that's going to solve the problems. But it requires when people are wanting to use AI or thinking about how to solve a problem within their industry or within their company, it's not about, okay, we're going to take AI and use it. But it's like you have to know the organization. You have to be able to break that job down that you're trying to then solve the problem for. You have to understand the context of the company and what that company is trying to achieve and what the goals are for the short term, medium term, long term. You have to know then you have to decide you have to know what tools are available and then what tool you're going to use. And that kind of systematic reasoning, that's exactly what you do in the humanities. That's exactly what you do in the social sciences, be able to break down tools, larger problem subsets, and then get those distilled down. And that's what, I think just be able to explain that to students is what we ask them to do in the classroom is important, even if they're going to be using AI, because you can't just say, oh, point and click, AI is going to solve it. You have to be able to do all those logical steps to get to the point where you can use AI. So I thought that was a really important thing to bring up because the AI doesn't have that specific domain-centric knowledge about every company because it doesn't have the data. And the companies don't want to release that data. They aren't going to want to give all their internal data. So you have to be able to do that on the internal side. And I thought that was a really important thing. So thank you for bringing that part up, Ryan.
We have just a couple of minutes left. I wonder if I could ask you, aside from your questions, and Nicole, thanks for Noel, thanks for the good discussion. I'd like to ask you for the gift of your feedback for the presentation. I wish, I wonder. I like that you covered on this. I kind of wish you'd done this. I wonder about this. If you've got anything, and I like to use this with students too, I wish, I wonder. Anything you could offer on one or all those categories, I would be grateful for your feedback.
Daniel, please go.
Excuse me. I would have liked to hear a little bit more about how AI is being used in healthcare settings and how other instructors in healthcare education are trying to incorporate it.
Thank you for the feedback.
And actually, Brian, Daniel, I just did a presentation on that last week. I could send you the slides if you'd like.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Joseph.
I'm not an expert, but
so one of the things that I'm still kind of wondering about, I don't know how to phrase it, and maybe as a question, but from the presentation is, what is it like trying to prognosticate into the future, and if we're replacing these tasks with automation, does that leave room for like those entry level points of entry there? So just I wonder what's the future look like.
Thank you for the feedback. I'm not sure I could address it well here. I'll try and stay true to the game, which is rather than defend or deflect, I'd be like, oh, thank you for the feedback, and I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Let me give that some thought, and point noted on the healthcare side as well. Thank you.
And Brian, I would note there is a question in the chat from Ali. How do you see AI in the biotechnology sector? Will it affect jobs as the software will be automated in the future?
I expect yes. Interesting, I was at a meeting last week with Eli Lilly. They didn't talk so much about AI. They were in the near term, they were focused on people that can work in sterile environments and help them produce stuff. I suspect where it will have a bigger effect is on the drug development side and the development side. How do I don't know whether it's I'm a little out of my depth here. Never stops me. Whether that's sort of the rational drug discovery or the modeling of it and using AI tools to model a whole bunch of compounds before they move to actually testing them in multi-well plate kind of thing. I suspect that on the research side, it will have a bigger effect. It might also on the diagnostic side. I was talking to a person that leads up Versity, who's the blood bank, and they have the Blood Research Institute. He was saying they are using it on the diagnostic side in some cases to make suggestions about other things to think about and look at. So that might be an example where they are using it.
Brian, I see we're running very short on time. And just so if there's anybody else who want to throw out one more, I wish I how do you have that again?
I wish, I wonder.
I wish, I wonder. I wrote that down and I lost the note. I could, please. Anybody else?
Maybe just one more. Sorry. I was thinking, I thought about, you mentioned earlier, even for business students, companies asking, what do you do with AI? Do you know what those companies are expecting to hear? Like, what would be a good answer to them?
I suppose it depends on the role. I guess I would want to, I don't know if a student were to ask me that question, I would want to give an example that demonstrated I knew how to use the basic tool, but I was also a smart consumer of it. So I used it in this context. I thought this was it offered me some interesting insights. I didn't like that. I went and researched that. So I guess it's like in an interview question, the thinking question. Have you ever heard, it's like, what's the takeoff weight of a 747? You're not expected to know that, but they want to hear how you think about it. And I would encourage students to not just give an example, but also demonstrate the critical thinking if they could.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. And many thanks to Brian Thompson. Really appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and kind of just all your information from all the contacts that you have. So thank you so much for being here with us today. I just wanted, before we go, to look forward to the future. We will return with Active Teaching Lab on November 5th. So remember the 5th of November. We will be talking about AI agents, and I'll be coming out with some more information on that. We had an instructor has been talking about how he's using AI agents in the class. And I know some people were just mentioning, hey, you could use it for rubric design. Yes, absolutely, you could. You could give AI agents to students to do stuff, because you can do that through all through Microsoft's Copilot with FERPA compliance, so that their data is protected. So we'll be talking about AI agents on November 5th. And then on December 3rd, for our last active teaching lab session of the semester, we'll be talking a bit about vibe coding. So how you can use AI to design and build code, which is really amazing on how it can train people and help you out, even as it hallucinates parts of it as well. So that's what's coming up in Active Teaching Lab in the next few months. Very much thank you for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you, everybody. Take care.